Have we got some working audio? We do. Hi, hello. It is me, back with yet another Phoenix Wright stream whenever I have time, just to get this game finished and out of the way. Right. Let's get going in quickly. Get jumping on board. Right. Excuse me if my throat was a little dry today. I seem to be picking up a cold yet again. This is not my year for illness. Right. I was waiting at my sister's office that day. A man came running in and took me hostage. Neil Marshall rescued me. But I'll never forget what I saw in that instant. The man raised up his knife and stabbed Mr. Marshall in the chest. It's a good thing you weren't harmed. I passed out. I don't remember much. That's understandable. However, please tell Mr. Edgeworth, what does this testimony have to do with Detective Goodman's murder? That will soon become apparent, Your Honor. You've got to admire him for his courage, considering he has no evidence. Very well, the defense may begin its cross-examination. Two years ago, the defendant was a detective in the police department, correct? Yes, she was second in command under Deputy Chief of Police Gant. My sister, she was the best detective ever. Yes, I remember. Deputy Chief Gant and Miss Skye used to be quite the pair. I believe they shared the same office. That's right. I'd always sit at my sister's desk and dream about playing that organ. I wanted to play it that day too. The police department and the prosecutor's office held a ceremony that day. Lana promised to take me to dinner after she finished her work. A man? Yes, Joe Dark. He was a serial killer. Joe Dark was brought in for questioning on that day of that ceremony. We were desperate to get anything on him that would lead to an arrest. When he saw his chance, he fled the room, right? Upon fleeing the room, Dark proceeded to take the elevator. He must have been in a panic because the elevator was going up. Then he ran into Skye in Gant's office. There was a lot of noise coming from outside, so I opened up the door to have a look. Well, that's when I saw him. What was the prosecutor doing there? That day, there were two people present during Dark's questioning. Deputy Chief Damon Gant and Prosecutor Neil Marshall. Almost forgot about Gant. Neil Marshall had just received the King of Prosecutors Award. Young and dedicated, he went straight to the questioning room after the ceremony. I assume that would also be why he was the first to run after Dark. When Dark grabbed me, I thought I was as good as dead. And that's when Prosecutor Marshall came running in. I don't remember it I don't clearly remember what happened then, but I'll never forget what I saw in that instant. Can you tell us about that? Mr. Marshall jumped on Dark. Just then, the lights went out. The lights? It was just about this time of year. There was a terrible storm going on and the lightning struck nearby. So the electricity went out? Wait a minute, if it was pitch dark in that room, you shouldn't have been able to see anything, right? Right, but just then lightning flashed again outside. That sudden flash, an unforgettable image of the scene in my mind. I told the detective about what I saw then. The detective? Yes, Detective Goodman. He was in charge of the case. Detective Rich Goodman, the victim. So you spoke with Detective Goodman about this 2 years ago? Yes, that's what's so scary about this trial. And you told Detective Goodman about what you saw? Yes, but at the time, the words just wouldn't come out. That's why I drew a picture. A picture? Yes, I think she mentioned that before. Well, Mr. Wright, have you heard enough? This picture the witness drew, I believe it has a very important meaning. But the list of evidence I was given 2 years ago didn't contain a picture. Witness, would you mind if we added this statement to your testimony? Yes, Your Honor. I assume it's going to be on this one. Alright. You drew a picture of the scene you witnessed, right? Yes, I wanted to do everything I could to help the investigation. I can still see it now, whenever I close my eyes. That's strange. I took over the case after Prosecutor Marshall died. Yet I never received any picture. Perhaps the witness is mistaken. But I did draw it, I swear. I'm not just imagining it. This picture Emma drew, that reminds me. I guess I should check the evidence again. Well, anyway, let's continue. This scene that imprinted an image on in your mind. Can you please describe it to us? The man. Hold on. You're just making sure it wasn't written in the back of that. Oh, shit. Pictures drawn on the back of this evidence list in magic marker, but I've got a very bad feeling about this. The man raised up his knife to stab Mr. Marshall in the chest. That must have been a real shock. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can still see it just as clearly. Tell us, what were you doing at that moment? I believe you testified that Joe Dark was holding you hostage. When the lightning struck and the lights went out, Mr. Marshall jumped on Dark. I was thrown aside, and the two began wrestling each other. I'm pretty sure I was watching them. Emma doesn't have any reason to lie, but Lana sure does. I need to get Emma to tell me as much as she can. Mr. Edgeworth? This little girl put all her heart into drawing that picture. And yet you would insist on denying its existence? Huh? Hey, I'm not the bad guy. All I'm saying is that as the prosecutor for that case, I wasn't handed such a picture. That may well be, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Behold! This is the evidence list of the SL9 incident. Please turn it over, Your Honor. Ah, what's this? Yes, what is that? Hey, that's it. That's the picture I drew. Indeed, two men appear to be wrestling here. What's the meaning of this? What are you doing with that list? Me? Only the prosecutor in charge should have access to that list. Huh? These lists, they're different from each other. What? It would appear, Mr. Edgeworth, that the evidence list you were handed 2 years ago was incomplete. These two lists fit together to form one. You can see the marks here where they were torn apart from each other. So you see, Mr. Edgeworth, it's quite obvious what happened. 2 years ago, only half of the evidence in that case ever reached you. What? What? Order! Order! But Miss Sky, why did you draw your picture on the back of such an important list? Because that's what Detective Goodman handed me in the questioning room, Your Honor. Wait a minute. If this list was torn in half, then that means... Your Honor, are you alright, Mr. Wright? Your eyes are bulging from your head. If the evidence list was torn in half, then there might be more of the drawing on the back of Mr. Edgeworth's list. Yes, that's quite conceivable. Mr. Edgeworth? It's possible. Is something wrong? Do you even have to ask? Sorry, Your Honor. There is indeed something drawn on the back of my list. It's that thing. That's that thing. That thing that was dancing in the evidence room. Clearly, this act of vandalism is the work of a certain chief of the detectives. I guess he was out of scrap paper. Very well. Witness, will you please testify that this picture you drew 2 years ago? Oh, yes, sir, Your Honor. What's wrong with Emma? She seemed to be thinking about something when she was looking at the picture. This is the picture I drew 2 years ago. The flash of lightning was so bright all I could see were shadows. After all that, I must have fainted. This picture shows exactly what I saw in that instant. To think a flash of lightning could burn such an image in your mind. Thanks to that, though, she was able to show us exactly what she saw. Well, I don't see any contradictions here. This clearly shows Joe Dark about the murder prosecutor Neil Marshall. The defense may now begin its cross-examination. Did you draw this picture right after the incident? I think I drew it 2 or 3 days later. At first I was in such a state of shock that I couldn't do anything. During that time, the investigation team was reorganized. Detective Goodman was placed in charge, under the direction of Damon Gant and Lana Skye. 2 or 3 days later. The memory should still have been fresh in her mind. Excuse me, witness. But can you please tell us why this picture is painted all black? So at the time you didn't even know it was Mr. Marshall who had come to your rescue? No, I couldn't see him clearly. The lightning was so bright and I was knocked to the floor. You were knocked to the floor? Dark had a tight grip on me, but when Mr. Marshall jumped on him, I was knocked away. I turned around. And that's when the lightning flashed. Poor Emma, I'm just glad she wasn't hurt. What happened after the lightning flashed? Hold on 1 second. Excuse me. Okay, no, my mic's still working again, okay. Oh, God. Last thing I need is to come down with a cold again. Right, you mean you didn't see the actual murder take place? No, I'm sorry. The flash of lightning only drove off the darkness for a split second. Not only that, but the trauma of the situation understandably caused the witness to faint. Do you really need to torture this girl any further? What? Hey, I'm not the bad guy here. Anyway, this picture. Sorry for asking so many times, but are you sure you drew exactly what you saw? Of course, this is the exact scene. It wasn't influenced in any way from your talks with the detectives. Are you insinuating we somehow manipulated her memory, Mr. Wright? No, of course not. I'd better watch out, or you may find some way to cut my salary. I drew this picture before I heard anything from the detectives, so I don't think anyone's story would have influenced me. Mr. Wright, is there something that's bothering you about this picture? Huh? Oh, well, that's strange. She claims this is exactly the scene that was imprinted in her mind, and yet, there's clearly a contradiction here. Well, I mean, the picture has, the issue of... the thing on the back. The sword doesn't have a point. Or the knife doesn't have a point. Hold on, I'll save now just to make sure. Yeah, the broken tip was found in the victim's body. Where's... That's Goodman's autopsy report. Okay, so it's not that either. Oh, stabbed in the back! Right, okay. I didn't notice that he was stabbed in the back. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this picture the witness drew contains a blatant contradiction. What? But I still remember it just like it was yesterday. Mr. Wright, perhaps it would be faster if you could simply point out this contradiction to us. What part of this picture... Guess this. The contradiction, of course, lies here. Take a look at the knife the man is holding. If you look closely, you can see its tip is broken. Even I don't have to look closely to see that, Mr. Wright. Oh, Mr. Wright, look at the evidence. See the murder weapon? Its tip is broken too. If I recall, the tip of the knife was found broken off in the victim's body. It was the conclusive piece of evidence that proved Joe Dark was the murderer. I'm afraid it's not so simple, Emma. And where, pray tell, could you possibly see a problem? It's obvious, really. The victim suffered a single stab wound to the back. If the victim was only stabbed once, then the murder weapon should not yet be broken. Ah, what's the meaning of this? Perhaps the knife was broken beforehand. Sorry, but I'm afraid that's not possible. The tip of the knife was found inside the victim's body. If it was broken beforehand, it couldn't possibly wind up there. That's right, but what does that mean? The tip of the knife was undeniably discovered within the victim's body. The only possible explanation is the witness's memory is mistaken. That's why I asked her so many times if she was sure she remembered correctly. I believe you were annoyed at the time, but she was sure she remembered correctly. But there's no other way to explain this inconsistency. Not so fast, Mr. Edgeworth. There is another explanation. Have you forgotten already? About a little something called falsified evidence? You're treading on thin ice, right? All I'm saying is that this broken knife tip might be the piece of evidence that was forged. You can't deny the possibility. No. Ah! Order! 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 Are you sure it's saying the investigation really was corrupted? Your Honor, please allow me to once again go over the events that took place on the day of the murder. The police department and the prosecutor's office were holding a ceremony that day. After receiving the King of Prosecutors' award at the ceremony, Neil Marshall questioned Joe Dark along with Damon Gant. During his questioning, Joe Dark fled the room. Prosecutor Marshall chased after him and was killed by Dark. It is my belief that somewhere in this story lies a lie. I'm not lying. The man really was holding up a broken knife. If that's true, then there's no other way around it. This could not have been the actual murder weapon. There must have been another broken knife. What are the chances of there being two broken knives? Another broken knife besides Joe Dark's? Could there have been one? If the witness is this adamant of the accuracy of what she saw, it can't just be explained away by a simple observational error. Mr. Wright, In that instant, Emma really did see a broken knife. I assume then that you have some information about the other broken knife. If so, please feel free to enlighten us. The murder weapon was already broken prior to the murder. There's only one way. Take a look at this. Here's the real murder weapon.
Take that!
If anything's broken here, it's you. Huh? I'm sure this must be all very amusing to you, right? But may I remind you that the fate of... Right, okay, so I have to show the picture then. The answer lies in the past. 2 years ago in the past. Right here inside this picture. This is a picture of the award ceremony. Ah! What is it, Mr. Edgeworth? It's the broken murder weapon. Notice the award Prosecutor Marshall is holding. That's a broken knife. As we earlier concluded, the knife in the drawing was not Joe Dark's knife. That being the case, the knife the witness saw was in all likelihood from this award. Order! 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 Neil Marshall was awarded the King of Prosecutors that day. As an award, he was given this broken shield and knife. When he chased after Joe Dark, he pulled out this knife. Being a prosecutor, he did not carry a pistol. This broken knife was the only weapon that he had in this dangerous situation. But that can't be. Oh, and why not, Mr. Edgeworth? Because if the King of Prosecutors' award knife was a murder weapon, then the murderer and the victim would be reversed. What do you mean? I mean, this man raising a knife would have been Prosecutor Neil Marshall. Oh. Oh! But the prosecutor was the one who actually died. That's true. What's going on here? It seems Mr. Wright has been a bit too eager to jump to conclusions. Wait, I remember now. I remember everything. Witness? Mr. Edgeworth. What is it? Could you show me your evidence list again, please? His list, the one with that picture scribbled on the back? I knew it. This picture. I'm the one who drew it. What? You drew that? That's right. The list wasn't torn in half at the time I drew this picture. All this time I've been trying so hard to forget. I must have locked this part away deep inside me. Perhaps it would be best if we added this to the witness's testimony. Could you please tell us what you've recalled, Miss Skye? Yes, Your Honor. First, a knife mix-up, and now the blue badger. This should be interesting. When I saw that man raise his knife, I panicked and rushed towards both of them. I think I knocked away the knife from the man with the knife. Just then there was another flash of lightning, and that's when I saw the blue badger. He wasn't in the room, but I'm sure I saw his shadow. This is certainly most unusual. Try impossible. The chief of detectives hadn't even designed him until this year. Oh, there we go. We've got a spelling and grammar mistake. That would mean he didn't even exist 2 years ago. Yes, well, the defense may now... Stop, please! Don't pursue this any further! Lana, what's the meaning of this? Please, remain seated in the defendant's chair. But you can't do this. I've already confessed to the crime. Why can't you just leave it at that? Chief Prosecutor Skye. We've already come this far. It's too late to turn back. Silence. The defense will now begin its cross-examination. Bailiff, please detain the defendant. It seems we're finally getting to the core of the matter. When you say that man, I assume you refer to Joe Dark. Yes, at least I think it was him. You think? All I could really see were shadows. The power outage that immediately preceded the incident is also documented in the prosecutor's office reports. So Lenyu, panicked and rushed towards both of them. Why would you do something so dangerous? What else could I have done? Oh wait, why am I doing Edward's voice? He was about to stab Mr. Marshall. She seems convinced that Dark was the one holding the knife. As we just theorized, Mr. Marshall was the one holding the knife. Well, I didn't know that at the time. When that Dark guy knocked me down, all I could think was, I've got to help that other person. What do you mean, you think? It all happened so fast, and I was in shock. I don't remember everything clearly. What I did, it's all kind of a blur. Miss Skye was almost killed before she was witness to a murder about to take place. With so much happening in a matter of seconds, a little disorientation is only natural. I saw the man about to stab the other person who I thought was Mr. Marshall. I knew I had to stop the man with the knife. What you did was very brave, young girl. So then, what happened next? Are you sure about this? Of course, see? I even drew a picture with him here. Well, it was the chief of detectives who thought up this hideous beast, and that was just this year. The Blue Badger didn't exist 2 years ago. This is all quite verifiable. I know it sounds strange. I was surprised too when I saw him at the police department. I had this nagging feeling that I had seen him before somewhere. Now I finally remember. Oh, brother, just when you thought that thing had caused enough commotion. Tell us, where in the room did you see him dancing? His shadow? So you mean you didn't actually see his face with a swinging smile and all? That's right, but I still remember it. He had 3 creepy horns. This is pointless. That thing couldn't have possibly existed 2 years ago. The witness must be mistaken. That may well be. But what important is what caused her to think she saw what she did? Oh, and I suppose you have an explanation. If so, then by all means, please tell us what this shadow really was. What was it Emma saw when the lightning flashed? Who is the Blue Badger really? Right, so I must have some evidence. It has to be this, right? Because of the 2 handles. Okay. The Blue Badger hadn't even been dreamt up when Emma drew the picture. I'll save this. Just to be on the safe side. Yeah, she's certain she saw its shadow. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the defence's belief that on that fateful day 2 years ago, there indeed was something that looked similar to the Blue Badger. Something that is now sitting in this very room. Mr. Wright. In this room? Very well, Mr. Wright. What is it that the witness saw in that instant? Please show us this mysterious Blue Badger look-alike. The mysterious Blue Badger was in fact this. Well, that's exactly what is that? I believe it's some sort of jar. But Mr. Wright, that doesn't look anything like the Blue Badger. Indeed it doesn't. As it stands now, it's just a plain jar. However, what if we were to change our viewpoint? Our viewpoint? I've got to show them the correct angle to look at this from. Oh boy. Basically that, right? That is where I'm going to make it look more like the Badger. For fuck's sake. Allow me to remind the defense that this case hinges on the witness's drawing. If Mr. Wright can't match the shape the witness drew, we cannot accept his claim. Come on, Mr. Wright, you can do it. Oh boy.
Take that! Objection!
For Christ's sake! This maybe?
Objection!
For Christ's sake! Okay, right. Okay, so this is clearly what we have to do, seeing as we keep getting put back to this. This is a ridiculous thing.
Take that! Objection!
This is actually going to drive me insane. I can't remember if this took me like forever back in the day or not. That's the angle I already had it at, right? So does it go up a bit more like that?
Take that!
For Christ's sake.
Objection! Take that!
Oh, hey, finally! I could swear I've done it like that before. Well, is this a miracle or what? No one can possibly deny this jar's resemblance to the Blue Badger. Fucking dumb. Dumb, dumb, dumb. No. It can't be. Order, order! The defense has proven its claim. The mysterious Blue Badger witnessed on the day of the crime was actually this. Although we all enjoyed Mr. Wright's dramatic performance, one question remains. What's your point? What do you mean? So that Badger thing was actually just a jar. That doesn't change anything. I'm afraid that's where you're wrong at, Mr. Edgeworth, you see. This changes everything. Indeed, very well then. Please tell us, what's different now that we know this witness saw this jar? The murder weapon? The murderer? I'm going to take these in turn. At the moment of the murder, the witness saw this jar. And a very specific angle, I might add, Mr. Wright. Yes, well, knowing this, where could she have seen this jar? Where? The location of the jar is shown in a picture taken on the day of the crime. It's on a shelf in the office of Damon Gant. But the body was found lying near Lana Sky's desk. The witness testified so herself. Yes, and it is these two facts that reveal what actually transpired. You see, the struggle between Dark and Marshall did not take place in Lana Sky's office, it happened on the other side of the room, in Chief Gant's office. Are you implying the murderer moved the victim's body from Damon Gant's office to Lana Sky's office. Yes. Why would he do that? There's no reason. Exactly. If there wasn't a reason, he wouldn't have gone through the trouble. The only logical conclusion is that there was a reason. Do you know what that reason was, Mr. Wright? I finally figured it out. So this is why Lana tried to stop the trial. It's too late to quit now, though. Please recall the witness's testimony. She said she knocked away the man who was holding up the knife. In the next instant, the jar was hit and flew through the air. Now tell me, what could have sent the jar flying? That would have to have been the impact the man made when he was knocked into the wall. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may draw your attention to this picture once more. If the man was knocked in the direction of the shelf the jar was sitting on, what would he have hit? Ah, the suit of armour, holding a very sharp and dangerous looking sword. Yes. And since the man who was knocked into the armour was carrying a broken knife, he would have had to have been Neil Marshall wielding the King of Prosecutors trophy. Oh, Mr. Wright, you can't be thinking. Yes, there is another possibility of what actually transpired in that room. Another possibility. Of course, the perpetrator would have had no idea, but nevertheless... I don't know if I can go through with this. Mr. Wright, what's the matter? If events took place as the defense theorizes, then the outcome is obvious. In that moment, assuming that the man Emma Sky knocked away was actually Prosecutor Neil Marshall... You mean Mr. Marshall died because of... me? No! I never imagined her testimony would lead to this. So it was the witness who took the victim's life, and then proved so with her own testimony. This is unprecedented. What? What are you saying? I'm sorry, Miss Sky, but given the circumstances, Joe Dark murdered Prosecutor Marshall. How can you think it was Emma? How dare you try to pin the crime on her? Imagine that, coming from you. If you recall, it was you who admitted to forging evidence 2 years ago. And the reason you moved Prosecutor Marshall's body was to keep anyone else from finding out about what Emma did, wasn't it? I assure you, Mr. Edgeworth, I have no idea what you're talking about. If you hope to have anyone believe your insane allegations, I'm afraid you're going to have to have proof. Tell me, do you have any conclusive proof that proves that my sister killed Neil Marshall? Evidence? I'm willing to bet you don't. Yes, it certainly would be difficult to prove this with evidence. If we don't have evidence, then we'll have to rely on testimony. I'm afraid that won't work in this case. Both parties involved in the incident are dead. We certainly can't get dead people to testify. Well, Phoenix, I don't know about that. This has all been a wild goose chase from the beginning. Touché, Miss Sky. Of course, that only leaves us with one possibility. You mean there's still another possibility? What do you mean, Mr. Edgeworth? I mean the possibility that the victim has left us a message. For better or worse, Mr. Marshall did not die instantly. He may have left behind the name of the person who took his life, in one manner or another. That's impossible. Well, Mr. Wright, this is the only possibility left to you. A message from the deceased. Does such a message exist? I'm going to think back to the court record. The real murderer's name. The blood stains on the jar. This message, something or other, whatever. Mr. Wright! Will you stop at nothing to prove my sister's a murderer? Do not be mistaken, Miss Sky. Our purpose is not to accuse Emma of any crime. There is only one thing we seek, the truth. No matter how painful it may be. Now then, Mr. Wright, please show us this piece of evidence that conveys the message from the deceased.
Take that!
This is the message left by the deceased. This is that blue badger from before, right? Oh, so he's gonna just speak the killer's name? If that thing... God, I'm sure it would. Looks like everyone's forgotten this is just a jar. A message was left here on the surface of this jar. What do you mean? If you look closely, you can see a faint trail of blood on this jar. It looks like someone wiped the blood away. Yes, but notice, for some reason the blood in some of the fragments was not wiped away. Yes, there is a blood... There is a line there drawn in blood. So what are you saying? Is these dots were once lines? Prosecutor Marshall did not die instantly. He used the few precious moments left to him to leave behind a message. One that someone apparently wiped away. But blood must have seeped into the jar when the lines changed directions. Precisely so. All we need to do is connect these points, and the victim's message will become apparent. No! Mr. Wright, what kind of message did the victim leave us? Your Honor, I believe these bloodstains will reveal us as they are. I've got to connect these dots. Oh god, this cold's gonna kill me. It's a defense attorney's duty to prove their client's innocence. That's why all I've been thinking about is saving Lana. After all my efforts, I never thought it would turn out like this. Emma, so this is the final message Prosecutor Marshall left behind. Of all people, she may not have meant it, but in the end, the one who took the victim's life was Emma Skye. See, Worthy, can't say I didn't warn you. Chief Gant, do you understand the implications of what you've done? What are you talking about? 2 years ago, Joe Dark was sentenced to death. He was convicted because of his final murder. I believe you were the prosecutor in the case, were you not? Ah. Yes, Worthy. Because of you, an innocent man was sentenced to death. Not only that, but you used forged evidence to ensure his conviction.
Objection!
Ah. But Joe Dark really was a serial murderer. That's undeniable. I'm afraid that's not important, didn't you know? We aren't defenders of justice. What? We're merely keepers of the law. Sentencing a man to death is no light matter. Even if there wasn't a cover-up or evidence forgery, ultimately the responsibility falls on the prosecutor in charge. Despite what anyone may say, this fact cannot be denied. What's going on in the prosecutor's office? The men are sentencing an innocent man to his death. How can he just stand there like it wasn't his fault? Order, 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 order! The gavel's pounding fell on deaf ears. Unable to settle the crowd, the judge declared a recess. Where this trial is headed, no one knows. Okay, I'm gonna save it there, and I'll probably be back in about an hour. I need to go and cook food for the family, so... Right, be back soon!